How do we define entrepreneurship? Well, there's always been this perception that entrepreneurs are these strange anomalies and these fringe players who buck the system. People that do things differently, they chart their own course, they kind of set out, they take these wild risks and set out and do crazy things. We're going to talk more about the fact that that's the perception, but the truth is far from what the perception is about what an entrepreneur is. They have these abilities that people typically ignore, as seen outside of convention, almost like gifts that they're born with, and it's this scientifically unfathomable mystery of what drives a person to be able to figure out how to snap their fingers and create success, or be able to know what the secret sauce or the secret answer is to solving a problem and being an independently wealthy, independently stable person who controls and drives their life. We also know that entrepreneurship has always been seen as a subject and something that we teach, but also related to small businesses. But we have learned through the research and what we're sharing here in this content that entrepreneurship, it's not enough just to add it to the perimeter of what we do in everyday life. It actually needs to be at the core of how education operates. The World Economic Forum talked about how entrepreneurship really, at the core of education, would change the way that people take a look at the way they solve problems, the way they develop these problem-solving skills as they go through life. So here they are, right? These high-growth entrepreneurs. Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg, Warren Buffett, and even, Richard Branson. I mean, these are the people that we think of when we think of entrepreneurs. These people that have figured out how to make millions of dollars, and they made it overnight, and they're crazy, and they've got these companies that are out of sight. But this is one of those myths of entrepreneurship, to think that this is what an entrepreneur is, because entrepreneurs are everyday people just like you and I that exist walking down the street. One of the examples that I use when we talk about this is, think about your town, your city, and just pick one street in that town. And if you could go from one end of town to the next on that one street and tell me how many signs there are for businesses on the side of the road, could you count them? I mean, thousands of them just on one street. Every one of those business signs represents somebody who decided to take a risk, to start a business, to provide a service and solve a problem. And those are entrepreneurs. And just because you're not Warren Buffett doesn't mean you're not successful, and doesn't mean you're not an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs solve problems every day for people and work to create a better existence for everybody else. And so we're going to talk more about that as we go through this. We also define entrepreneurship in kind of what we call the plan and pitch approach. The plan and pitch approach is what we see a lot of times on television, like Shark Tank. It's like, so the idea is we find something that's really scalable, and the same thing applies to the workplace, even in government or the private sector. When we have an idea for a project, before we spend any money or put any money towards it, we always ask the folks that are coming up with these ideas to figure out really quickly what can scale. We're not going to invest in these small things. We need something that can scale, that we can get a lot of work and effort behind. And a lot of times that's associated. It's got to be high growth, potential for something really large. And then we come up with a business plan or a proposal. For businesses, it's a business plan. It's the 40 pages to say what my vision is, what our mission is, our marketing plan, our strategy. And then we have 20 pages in there that tell us how much money we're going to make over the next 5 years, as if we just magically know that. And we compare ourselves to people in other cities or people in other businesses that are doing similar work and assume that applies to us. Well, what we do in government or in the workplace is we develop a proposal. Then we have to go show that proposal to someone to prove to them why this is going to be a good investment. And then we do lots of research. We take other organizations that have done what we have done or want to do, or we look at other cities that have done this, or we look at other businesses that have sold this particular product. And then, we come up with financial projections, as I mentioned before. Most financial projections are guesses, because until you've actually sold something, a financial projection is just a thought. And we borrow those from other associations, and then we go look for people to give us the money. Whether it be in business, we look for investors, right, to pour money into the project that we haven't even started yet. In the workplace, whether it be private sector or government, what we do is we look for grants, we look for funding, we look for different ways we can carve out of the budget to fund something that we want to create. That's kind of the the typical way that we approach developing new business. But here's the deal. Out of all of those different ways of doing that, only 1.5% of all those crazy ideas actually either get funded in the venture capital world or even get adopted within the workplace or within city government or within state government or within nonprofit organizations. Because there's so many people competing for those. Only 1.5% actually makes that. So, another way we define entrepreneurship is through small business management. So what is small business management? Well, here we go, right? We do market research. We write business plans and proposals. We have our finance and accounting structures put in place and able to manage the company. We have marketing and sales in order to get our product out there and to find ways to promote it. We have these legal structures in place to protect the company, to protect the individuals in the company, and we seek financing for payroll, for investment, for building product, etc. So every place we go, we teach this in business school. I ran the business administration program as the program chair for many years at Central New Mexico Community College, where I've taught. And we teach business administration, which is business management. And business management is great. However, it's important to know entrepreneurship is not management. Management is management. Management happens after you've established a product or built a company or have an organization and has a structure to it. It actually is making some weather. It's like, wow, well, Tom, why do we teach people then all these management structures before they go out and start a business? Now, look, they're very important, and everyone needs to understand management and accounting and finance and marketing and sales. Yes, you got to know those things. But in the entrepreneurial phase, whether it be in a business or whether it be in an existing organization, the entrepreneurial phase is more about ideas, validation, and testing that. I don't need to worry about whether or not we have a legal structure in place for a corporation, or I don't need to worry about how many people I've got to hire to do this before I test to see if this is even a problem, before I test to see if this is even something that needs to be done, okay? So why is there a disconnect? Well, here's the entrepreneurial reality for most new entrepreneurs. In business, for instance, we'll start there. A lot of new entrepreneurs don't have breakthrough technology when they're solving a problem. And most of them have little to no formal planning. Okay, studies show. Most of the research is ad hoc, or it's with real people and face-to-face interviews. Most of them start with $10,000 or less in funding, and that's either from credit cards, from family, friends, or fools who loan them money. And most of them have little to no experience, so they learn along the way. So yes, we want to teach people, obviously, ways to get excited about solving problems, but this is the entrepreneurial reality. This is the reality for 90% of the companies that are out there. The same thing applies to the workplace. The best people, the people who have the most solutions to the problems we have in the workplace, are not going to be our top-level managers all the time. Many of them are our frontline employees that are working every day with the customer, working every day with the public, every day with the people we serve, that are experiencing those pain points or experiencing those difficulties and have ideas that they can test right there on site to be able to determine if something is valid, something actually can work to solve a problem. It's not to come up with a great technological idea, get bought out by an investor, and be a billionaire in 6 weeks. Even Bill Gates and Steve Jobs took 10, 15 years before their companies got off the ground and started making huge amounts of profit. These overnight successes don't happen overnight. Sometimes they take a long time. And of course, what? It all comes from these humble, improvised origins. Something to remember as we wrap up how we define entrepreneurship is something Albert Einstein said. We can't solve problems with the same thinking we use to create them. And I think that happens a lot. We continue to try to figure out how to solve the problem, but we have the same mindset, associated with how we created the problem in the first place. We need to solve problems from a completely different mindset. We need to solve problems from the mindset of understanding what the real problems are. A lot of times we think there's a problem, only to find out it's a symptom of a larger problem. Let's say you're hungry, so you eat. But are you really hungry? Or are you just bored? Or are you tired, right? We really need to think and understand, how do I validate that something's really a problem? Because something's just a problem for me doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a problem for someone else. Entrepreneurship is basically opportunity discovery. It's looking for opportunity in the problems. A lot of times in the workplace, when we're working with employees and supervisors, I will find employees and supervisors have a real difficult time with the word problem, because if you start talking about problems in their department or their workplace, they get real nervous. They don't want to talk about the problems because their supervisors will be embarrassed by it. They don't want the problems to be elevated up the chain, or they don't want to admit that there's a problem. But the reality is, in every single organization, we are loaded with problems. There are problems everywhere. We've got to learn how to shift our mindset from a problem mentality to an opportunity mentality. Part of the entrepreneurial mindset is understanding that problems are opportunities, and we're going to talk about that in Unit 2. Entrepreneurship is basically opportunity discovery. It's where I start looking for opportunities to solve problems. I start looking for opportunities to make an impact, to make a difference, to innovate, to change, to improve a process that impacts a large number of people within the organization of the workplace or in the world. This is how businesses get started. When there's not a good donut shop in town, what do? Go to Walmart? Go to Dunkin' Donuts. Here in Albuquerque, we used to have a lot of donut shops, and then all of a sudden, in the last 10 years, we got down to 2 real shops. One was Dunkin', one was Krispy Kreme. And now, some of you say, well, that's done, great, you're over it. Well, not really. If you go to Texas, Oklahoma, or any other city, the other direction, there's donut shops everywhere. So here's an example, right? We have a problem identified. There's a lack of donut shops. Well, that's an opportunity. I can create a donut shop. Maybe people don't want to buy donuts here. I need to find that out. And I don't have to spend any money to find that out and talk to people and get an idea of whether or not that's really an issue here. Because if 1,000 people tell me that they want donuts in Albuquerque, maybe I've got something I could work on. And then I determine, what kind of donuts, specialty donuts, big fat donuts. In the last 2 or 3 years, we've actually had some specialty donut shops come up, and now we have a mobile donut shop that just came out of the ground in 2018. And it's all because of understanding what the needs of the people are and coming with creative ways to solve those problems. So the same thing applies in the workplace. How do I identify a problem? We continue to have problems with the fuel or the insurance cost or the ordering of new vehicles. How do I figure out how to work that out? Well, I simply understand that a problem is an opportunity. And when a problem is an opportunity, I don't have to be afraid of it anymore. So what is a mindset? Entrepreneurship begins with a mindset. And if we define mindset, it's very simple. It's basically the underlying beliefs and assumptions that drive our behavior. What you believe, what you assume about life will drive your behavior. If you believe that thunder is the sound that 2 clouds make when they hit, then you'll behave accordingly. When lightning strikes outside, you'll think it's just pretty, right? You may not realize that, lightning is actually the sound that static electricity makes when it, exposed to the air and there's we all have assumptions. We have assumptions about other people in other parts of town, the other side of the tracks, or the up in the heights, whatever. We have assumptions. We have assumptions about our background. We have assumptions about people that we grew up with. We have assumptions about other cities and states. Our assumptions drive our behavior. Some of you will go out of your way on your way to work to take a certain route because you have an assumption that if you go to that route, you might experience something. Some of you avoid certain gas stations or certain stores or certain people every day because of an assumption or an underlying belief. Now, I'm not suggesting that your beliefs need to be changed, because a lot of you have really valuable beliefs. It's not about that. It's about us understanding that our behavior is tied to those beliefs. So if you have a behavior that continues to get you in a position that doesn't help you move forward, we need to ask ourselves, what is the underlying belief that drives that behavior? This is basic psychology. If you're trying to stop drinking alcohol, what is the belief that is underlying that behavior? That you need it? Maybe I'm addicted to it. Maybe no one can help. Maybe this will get me through the day. I don't know. Fill in the blank, right? Can we change the mindset? Can we change the belief? Of course we can. But we need to understand a mindset is simply underlying beliefs and assumptions that drive the behavior.